In the cluttered corridor, the silence was absolute until a wet slap of movement broke it. A pale woman uncurled from the floorboards, her limbs unfolding with the stiff, unnatural grace of a marionette. She was damp, slick with a soupy gray fluid that clung to her skin. Curling tendrils of mist and steam rose from her body, dissipating into the chill air. Tresses of black hair were plastered against her ashen skin, accentuating the sharp skeletal angles of her face. She stood still for a long moment, tilting her head as she stared down the dimly lit hallway, fixing her gaze in the direction Corbin and Vespara had fled. Her eyes severed the darkness like coals. She took a single step forward, the movement slow and heavy, followed by another.
Hi everyone, welcome back to Virtual Muse, where we're again stepping into our Don't Die July horror story. Resident Evil and Silent Hill are the random inspirations we're layering in so far, and we'll add another one to that today. Maybe we'll roll a book or a movie to break up the video games. Our characters are Corbin Garant and Vespara Keen. Vespara is from a locally important family with some connections and influence. She's had strange experiences through her life that make her wonder if there's some supernatural secret in her family history. And because she's been thinking about this kind of thing for years, she's become fascinated by folklore and dark mysteries in general. She had to travel somewhere else in the region for some reason, and because she's from a semi-important family, she was sent on her trip with a bodyguard, Corbin Garant, a rookie from the town guard, who was given this troublesome job nobody wanted. Along the way, they stopped in a wild town called Opossum Hollow, hoping to find an inn for the night. Unbeknownst to them, a magical plague had broken out in Opossum Hollow, turning some of its victims into monsters and raising the dead as zombies. Corbin and Vespara had no idea they were getting to this. They were just looking for somewhere to rest the night and get dry, because it was starting to rain. Now they're fighting to survive, as far as they know, purely by chance. After Corbin and Vespara entered a seemingly vacant inn, they encountered their first zombie in the town and started to realize what had happened. Then a thick, mysterious fog settled over the town, making it impossible for them to escape the inn. They found that the fog is unnatural and has weird effects, like making them lapse into dreams and memories when they look into it for too long. And last time something in the fog attacked Corbin, they glimpsed a pale woman emerging from it as they ran away. But they didn't wait around to find out what it was. They rushed into a room which turned out to be a private office, mostly full of business logs and ledgers. But one of the books was a strange volume called Arcana Imperialis, or Imperial Secrets. They have no idea what it's about, because it's written in some sort of code, but Corbin took it to decipher it later. Then two zombies rushed out of the darkness and attacked them. They put the creatures down and proceeded to another door, which brought them to the landing of a staircase, leading into an unknown cellar. We left off right there, with the two of them peering into the darkness.
Ooh, that's such a vivid image. So we're picking up with Corbin and Vespara, standing at the top of the spiral staircase, staring down into the unknown. I imagine the air in the cellar is redolent with dust and the smell of old wood, the candlelight casting eerie shadows on the walls as they descend the creaking stairs cautiously.
Corbin closes the door behind them. He doesn't like the look of this place and wouldn't normally choose to go down the stairs, but they saw the pale woman in the hallway behind them, and he knows the more closed doors they can put between themselves and her, the better. He makes the bet that going into this basement is the lesser of two evils.
At the bottom of the staircase, Corbin holds the candle higher. Racks of crates and barrels come into view, marked with symbols. The markings seem almost innocent at first, but take on a more ominous tone as Vespara's eyes linger on them. Her knowledge of folklore might lead her to recognize some of these marks. They're intricate and curved, almost organic looking, like vines or branches. Maybe they're some kind of ancient rune or sigil, tied to a very old ritual or mythology.
Maybe they're connected to some kind of animalistic or druidic magic.
That's possible. Maybe the symbols are a form of protection or warding, meant to keep whatever darkness is afflicting the town from spreading further.
Ooh, interesting. Maybe the words are meant to keep something out, but it's equally possible that they're meant to keep something in. Maybe the sigils mean the crates contain or were used to transport something dangerous.
That's a chilling thought.
Corbin cautiously approaches one of the crates and knocks on the side, trying to assess from the sound if it's empty or full.
His knock echoes through the cellar, and for a moment, there's complete silence. Then, a faint rustling noise emanates from the crate, soft enough that it might be the creaking of old wood, but loud enough to make Vespara's eyes snap towards the crate with concern.
Does the sound persist as if something might be moving inside the crate, or does it fall silent again?
The rustling grows slightly louder, taking on a faint scratching quality, as if something inside the crate is shifting against the wood.
Ooh, perfect. I just rolled D20 on our classic horror story menu, and our new inspiration for this session is 15, Nightmare on Elm Street. Maybe it's time to introduce a Freddy Krueger type threat.
A dream demon would fit perfectly with the surreal atmosphere we've built so far. Maybe the symbols on the crates are more than just protective wards. They're also a warning about the nightmares that lurk within.
Hang on, I need to think. How about this? What if the innkeeper had a misguided money-making idea and used shallow knowledge of druidic magic to bring something here that's related to vivid or lucid dreams, thinking it would create amazing and memorable experiences for his guests and make his inn famous? But he lost control of the force or creature he thought he could use. I like how that kind of connects to the Resident Evil influence, because the core of many RE plots is that someone's misguided attempts to make money went horribly wrong.
Nice. That creates an interesting dynamic where the inn becomes a hub not just for travelers, but also a focal point for the supernatural forces unleashed in Opossum Hollow.
Maybe we could draw some inspiration for the mythical force or creature by thinking about existing folklore related to dreams.
Drawing from folklore would give it a rich history and depth. There's the Sandman, Morpheus, and other figures from mythology who deal with sleep and dreams. But to make it scarier, maybe we could consider something like the Baku, a Japanese dream eater that feeds on nightmares.
I like that. Maybe this entity enters dreams and feeds on nightmares. But what the innkeeper failed to understand is that it would eventually start creating nightmares to sustain itself.
That's a dark twist. So, the entity's presence in the dreamscape starts manipulating people's subconscious to create its own fuel, effectively causing the very thing it was meant to consume.
So what do you imagine is in the crates? I doubt it's as simple as physically catching these creatures and bringing them into the inn.
The crates could hold enchanted artifacts or medallions that resonate with the entity's power, acting like beacons. Each item might have its own unique connection to different fears or dreams.
So maybe the sigils and wards Vespara sees on the crates relate to blocking the creatures from the medallions while they're in storage. It might be that the innkeeper's misguided idea was to hang these medallions on headboards or slip them under pillows, triggering the creatures to get into guest dreams. I can see how that might seem to him like a good gimmick, and also how it could go horribly wrong.
The innkeeper probably thought he was being cautious by keeping the medallions contained, but he underestimated the power of the entities they attract. And now the crates might be more like ticking time bombs waiting to unleash the nightmares.
So Vespar figures all this out by recognizing the sigils and wards in the crates, which make it somewhat obvious because they're all druidic wards against nightmare eaters. Corbin pops one of the crates open and looks inside with the light of his candle.
Inside the crate, Corbin sees a delicate silver medallion adorned with tiny twisted roots and leaves, pulsing with a faint glow. As he gazes at it, the air around him seems to thicken with an unsettling energy.
Corbin hastily closes the crate, letting the wards enclose the medallion again and repel the spectral entities he felt zeroing in. I've been thinking that if we're going to keep channeling the Resident Evil vibe, we need some very weird things woven into the normal operation of the inn. I remember one part in Code Veronica where you had to get a certain song to play on a music box to trigger the canopy of a four-poster bed to lower on hydraulics, which revealed a hidden ladder, which led up to a platform where you got the key to open the door to a laboratory. Just imagine a researcher working in the lab having to do that during their normal workday. That's exactly the kind of really bizarre and nonsensical puzzle I want to add.
That sounds insane and genius. I love the idea of normal, mundane tasks taking on a sinister twist, like a guest ordering a room service breakfast while completely unaware that the toast will be delivered on a tray floating above the floor, courtesy of a mysterious servant with supernatural abilities. Can you imagine their face when they see the tray hovering in midair, with the toast arranged precisely on the plate, accompanied by a side of eerily fresh fruit?
I imagine Corbin raises his candle to spread the light farther and looks around the room for other ways out.
There's a small wooden staircase going down deeper into darkness.
Ooh, there's a sub-basement.
Yeah, and I'm sure it's full of all sorts of wonderful secrets and surprises, none of which will be good for Corbin and Vespara.
Corbin shrugs and says something like, "Oh well, the only way out is through."
That's so typical of Corbin, charging headfirst into potential danger. Reluctantly, Vespara follows close behind.
The short flight of stairs brings them to a corridor long enough that the light of Corbin's candle can't reach the end, and ends in darkness, but reveals a torch mounted on the wall, and he lights it. The illumination spreads a little farther. I imagine the dirt floor is rough, and there are muddy patches where water has gathered.
There are no doors immediately visible on the side walls, but there are large, ancient-looking wooden beams supporting the low ceiling, and the walls themselves are made of cold, damp stone. The only clear path is forward into the darkness.
I just had a thought. What if this goes deeper than Corbin and Vespara suspect, literally and metaphorically? The inn is built on top of a more ancient site.
That raises the stakes and opens up a whole new realm of possibilities. Imagine the inn's foundation resting on top of an ancient ritual site.
That could help explain where the innkeeper got the artifacts and medallions he was stockpiling in the basement. Maybe he had workers delving into the site, looting the supernatural artifacts they found, until it all went horribly wrong.
That backstory makes sense. The innkeeper's obsession could have driven him to desecrate the ancient site, unleashing a terrible force that ultimately consumed him.
I can imagine this started with an accidental discovery when they were digging the Inn's basement, discovered a link to a much older set of subterranean tunnels, and the innkeeper began exploring the ancient artifacts from their jewel site for his fairly small potatoes dream idea to make the Inn more popular by magical means. But he became steadily more obsessed as they explored deeper and deeper, and his exploitation of the old magic became more and more reckless.
That's a great direction to take the story, exploring the innkeeper's gradual descent into madness as he becomes increasingly enthralled by the power of the ancient artifacts, and losing sight of the risks and consequences of meddling with forces beyond his control.
Corbin and Vespara hear a crash above them as the door to the room they were in a minute ago is thrown open. Then a booming, distorted female scream. They know the pale woman they saw before is still pursuing them, so their retreat is cut off, and they have no option but to push forward down the dark corridor.
The scream sends shivers down their spines, and they quicken their pace. The circle of light constricts as they move further away from the light of the torch, until they are relying on Corbin's candle, the darkness seeming to attempt to swallow them whole.
They proceed to the end of the corridor and find an open doorway communicating with a wider space. Corbin raises his candle and looks around.
An underground chamber stretches out before them, with rows of ancient stone pillars disappearing into the darkness, and the sound of dripping water echoing off the walls.
Do they hear any sounds besides the drip water or feel any moving currents of air or anything?
They catch a faint whisper of distant chanting, almost imperceptible, and a slight vibration beneath their feet, like the reverberation of a drumbeat long past.
Ooh, long past drums. Maybe the line here between dreams, memory, and waking reality is thin.
That's a good thread to pull. What if the chamber itself is a nexus point where those boundaries blur, and Corbin and Vespara start experiencing visions or echoes of recollections that aren't quite their own?
We haven't really pulled the lens back from the main characters and developed the broader setting at all. And I like the idea of mysterious ruins linked to a long-forgotten druidic magic being scattered everywhere, with new sites being randomly discovered from time to time.
I love that idea. The ancient civilization could have been wiped out or forced to flee because of their reliance on dark magic, leaving behind remnants of their power and knowledge that Corbin and Vespara stumble upon. This could also create an opportunity to introduce other groups or factions searching for these lost ruins. I think it's possible that the Druids were destroyed by a combination of both internal corruption and external forces. Their reliance on dark magic could have awakened a powerful entity that turned against them, and then other human factions took advantage of their weakness to launch a final attack.
That makes sense. We'll keep developing this backstory as it becomes relevant. For now, all we need are the broad strokes of it. And the fact that ancient ruins like this underground ritual site aren't a totally unprecedented thing to find. Meanwhile, I think Corbin understands that even though the pale woman is following, they can't just run blindly ahead into the ruins. There's almost no chance they'll find an alternative way out before the candle burns away, and they're lost in the dark. His idea is that they should look for a place to hide, hope the woman will pass by thinking they went on ahead, then double back behind her and escape the way they came.
That's a solid plan, considering their limited options. But I wonder if Vespara will agree, given her instincts and connection to the ritual site. She might sense something in the chamber worth investigating before retreating.
Does she see or hear anything else on the site that draws her in?
She notices that the air in the chamber seems to vibrate with a low hum, almost like the whispers they heard earlier, and the symbol etched into the wall appears to be pulsing with a faint luminescence. Vespara's eyes narrow as she studies the symbol, trying to place it from her knowledge of ancient lore. She recalls a similar marking mentioned in a rare text about an ancient cult that worshipped a deity associated with the underworld.
No, maybe the influence of this deity is lingering on the site and somehow provided the source of magical power that allowed the Dream Eater creatures to transform the nightmares they create into physical manifestations in the waking world.
That would explain why the creatures seem to be drawn to the ritual site, and possibly why the innkeeper's efforts went awry. The dark energy from the underworld deity could have amplified the creatures' powers, allowing them to bridge the gap between the dream world and reality.
As she stares at the symbol on the wall, figuring this out, Corbin grabs her shoulder and whispers urgently to Vespara that they don't have much time and need to pick somewhere to hide.
After a moment of silence, they detect the soft crunch of footsteps echoing down the corridor, growing louder with each passing second.
Corbin pulls Vespara towards one of the pillars of the chamber which they can hide behind. He extinguishes his candle and plunges them into pitch darkness.
The sudden darkness envelops them, and Vespara's hand instinctively finds Corbin's, her grip tightening, listening to the pale woman's approach. Vespara remains frozen, her chest barely rising with shallow breaths, her heart pounding as she focuses all her senses on the pale woman's proximity.
They hear the pale woman enter the chamber and begin to walk across the floor. Corbin holds his breath for all his worth, squeezes Vespara's hand, willing her to get the message to stay totally still and silent. I'm not really sure how to handle this mechanically. I guess staying hidden could have static target number, and both characters make an attribute check. I think that fits, because they're both hiding, and if either one is found, they'll both be found. For Corbin, 9. He makes it. For Vespara, 11. Good rules. They locked up. The pale woman hesitates in the chamber. They hear the scuff of her feet as she turns in place, listening to the faint noises in the chamber. Then they hear her footsteps resume as she proceeds deeper into the dark ruins. They wait a handful of seconds after the soft footsteps trail into silence, trying to unfreeze their muscles and start breathing normally again.
Now that they've avoided detection, maybe Vespara should take a closer look at the symbol etched into the wall, see if she can learn more about its significance and the ancient cult that worshipped that underworld deity.
Good idea. Is there anything specific she can learn from the symbol?
Yeah, the name of the deity is Jathan, an ancient god of the underworld, associated with darkness, shadow, and decay. Vespara remembers reading that Jathan was once worshipped by a cult that believed they could harness its power to manipulate the veil between worlds. It definitely points to some kind of ritual or sacrifice happening here, maybe even related to the Dreamwalkers or the Innkeeper's experiments.
Ooh, the plot thickens. But I think as Vespara studies the faintly glowing sigil on the wall, Corbin stays focused on the immediate threat of the pale woman and worries that she could come back at any moment. He gives Vespara a few seconds, then grabs her wrist and pulls her with him as they run from the chamber, back the way they came. This seems like a good cliffhanger to leave it on. Let's wrap it up and save the escape from the basement for next time. Until then. And if you watched the end, remember to like the video and subscribe to the channel if you want to catch the next one.